Okay, welcome back to my latest challenge video series for Age of Wonders 3. And in this challenge, which I'm calling the T1 or Tier 1 Orc Spearman Only Challenge, in this challenge, I am only allowed to use the Orc Spearman unit in my battles for the entire duration of the game. Anytime I acquire any additional military units through site clearing rewards, tribute, building, whatever else, if it's not an Orc Spearman unit, I can't use it. I must immediately disband it so that it can never be used in battle. So that is the limitation I'm placing on myself. I'm only able to use this one type of unit, this lowly Tier 1 irregular unit from the Orc race. And in this one, I'll be playing Orc Warlord, and I'll say more about that in a bit. And as far as the leader goes, you have to have a leader in game, right? You can't disband your leader. It's not possible. And so the way I'm going to handle the fact that you need to keep your leader alive, but for this challenge, the leader should not be directly involved in battle. The limitation I'm going to put on myself is that the leader needs to find somewhere on the strategic map, like the corner of the map, to hide and never get engaged in battle. And if I fail to do that and the leader gets involved in a battle, I automatically forfeit the challenge. I lose automatically. That's the self-imposed restriction. So the leader can never be present, physically present during any battle, whether attack or defense. For our purposes, I will allow myself to have the leader cast strategic spells, and the leader will be allowed to cast combat spells with one important exception, which is the leader is never allowed to cast a spell that has the potential to summon a unit, right? So something like summoning elementals, or something like Chaos Rift, where it summons units, or Scourge of Undead, or summon Beast Horde, that sort of stuff. So my leader is never allowed to use any combat spell that could create additional units that would be brought to my side. And this also means that I'm not allowed to use any spells or anything that would like true resurrect or would convert in some way, because I'm never supposed to have a unit that is not an Orc Spearman under my control for the purposes of battle. So that is going to be the key limitation for that. What else? I will allow myself to use non-military units beyond Orc Spearmen. So I will allow myself to build builders and use them to build roads and watchtowers and fortresses and stuff, since the builders are non-military. But like all my past challenge series, I will not allow myself to use settlers, which actually will be a pretty significant handicap for this sort of challenge, since the macro economic focus of this challenge is very high. It's much less on battlefield micro, because there's only so much you can do when you just got Orc Spearman. So it's going to be much more important for me to maximize efficiency in terms of my economy and the campaign overworld. And so the fact that I can't build settlers and build up a bunch more cities, etc., will be a significant limitation. And I'm putting that limitation on myself because humans are much better at creating and using settlers well than the AI are. So some of the handicaps I'm adding to myself is that I'm not allowed to use settlers. What else? Yeah, I think that's the stuff I need to say about that. So let's go over some settings. The settings will be mostly identical to many of my past challenge series. 6 Emperor level AI opponents. I will be the 1 human versus 5 allied Emperor level opponents. Large size map, land type because AI navigate this most easily. Game full and normal. We know about this surface and underground. Starting town. Village by default. Weak starting units. I'm setting this to weak because it will increase the number of tier 1 Orc Spearman that I'll start with, which is essential since that's the only type of unit I can start with. So it makes sense to set it to weak. And again, any units I start with that are not the leader, which I can't disband, or Orc Spearman, I will have to disband those immediately, right at the start of turn 1, because I'm not going to be able to use them per my self-imposed restrictions. Starting distance far to give the AI time to snowball and build up before they encounter me. Fewer roaming units because AI can get hamstringed by them. Few treasures. This probably doesn't matter as much since I'm not using heroes, but it's consistent with my past ones. Many cities to allow AI to snowball. Average treasure structures, usually set this to few because humans can usually take advantage of them better than AI can. Everything's set to normal for geography. So 5 allied AI, first me, teams, classic, advanced rules, normal, standard, normal, never, normal, medium. I'll leave these by default. I turned off city founding so that I wouldn't be able to found cities. Yep, the rest of that is standard. So those are the settings. And so I will introduce you to the hero I've decided to use. Okay, so when I was thinking about, because I knew I wanted to do a challenge where I could only use the crappiest units in the game, the tier 1 irregulars. And so I was wondering which race I would want to use for this tier 1 irregulars only challenge. And I thought I would start with Orc because their tier 1s, their tier 1 irregulars are decent. Their Orc Spearman, as far as these tier 1 irregulars go, are some of the better ones. And I'll talk more about reasons for that in a bit. But the key things are that the Orc Spearman, like all orcs, have victory rush. So if you win a battle, you get plus 10 HP, so that can help you with site clearing. At gold rank, they get armor piercing, which can help with some higher tier enemy units. They get sprint, which is very valuable for being able to flank and also have more mobility. And what else is essential about them? They have shield as an attribute, and that is handy because it gives them a bit more defense. And orcs, have more HP as a race by default. And so I thought that, the Orc Spearman would be some of the best units to try for this. So for this game, given that I'm choosing orcs, I'm only limiting myself to Orc Spearman as the units I can use in battle. When it comes to class, that was more complicated. I will, in turn 1, talk more about why I'm using Warlord. So in the next video, I will talk more about why I picked Warlord as my class for this. But I will take some time now to talk about why I'm choosing the specializations that I am. Last few challenges, I have found Explorer really valuable for the Master Cartographer, so that I have, as soon as I hit Master Cartographer and I can see the whole map with Fog of War, I know where people's capitals are. I can do much more efficient movement and strategizing as a result. And there are also a host of benefits that come with the Explorer specialization for irregular units. Let me pull up my list here so I can make sure not to miss anything. So I'm going to pull up the notes on this specialization. So yeah, Explorer specializations, irregulars get +1 vision range. That will be very valuable since all my military troops will be these Orc Spearmen irregulars. They get mountaineering and forestry with another upgrade, so that will help them move about the map off of roads. They will get in wetland walking in addition. They'll get +8 movement from another upgrade to all irregulars, and that will, between the +8 movement and the sprint on these Orc Spearmen, they will be fast. That will really help with kiting. That will really help with closing the distance fast. That will help with outside of battle movement. Like that would just be a really good quality of life. And then of course, Master Cartographer I've talked about. So Explorer is definitely the #1 most important specialization for success with this sort of Orc Spearman only challenge. As far as the other 2 specializations, it was more up in the air. But what I'm trying is Shadowborn, which is, I would like it for the Embrace Darkness buff on cities, the strategic spell, so I can get lifesteal on the Orc Spearman I produce or summon via a Warlord spell in those cities. So I think that lifesteal could give them a bit more tankiness, and the Gift of Necron for the +15 health when you kill an enemy unit. That could also prove to be very valuable to help keep their health up during difficult battles. So I think I'm going to go with that. The third one being Destruction, which again, you've often seen in my past challenges, because I just love Hasty Plunder so much. The ability to raise a city to the ground and get cash and mana for it within 2 turns is just really hard to pass up. So I think I'm going to use that, though it will be less relevant for this challenge than my past ones where I'm using like only my starting weak army, or only 6 units or only heroes or whatever, because I'm going to be mass producing Orc Spearmen because it's the only way I'm going to win. I'm going to have a lot of units, and so I should be able to hold a lot of territory, defend a lot of territory. And because of that, it feels like I'll be able to take and hold cities, and there will be less of a pressure to take a city, hasty plunder it, and move on immediately without sticking around until the plunder is done. And I'm also, because I can take and hold terrain, I also want to be able to hold cities I capture and get them starting to produce. I can migrate them to orcs, and I want to have them start to produce more Orc Spearmen right at the front lines, right? Because I want to reinforce my armies. So I think I'm going to be doing less hasty plundering, but I still like the flexibility of it, especially if there's a city that I'm just not going to be able to hold. So that's the thing that I like about that. And then Scorched Earth can be nice in certain circumstances, as I've talked about in past videos. So those specializations don't grant me any like damage dealing spells. And I wondered about taking something like Fire Adept for Fireball and Skin of Oil and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think I really want to try and force myself to use my Orc Spearman to be doing all the damage rather than relying on damage spells is like the way to cheese around the fact that my T1 army sucks. T1 regulars. So that is my thinking on that. You know what? Just to be, actually I said I was going to, in the next video for covering turn 1 in the start, that's when I would talk about Warlord, but now that I've got my notes pulled up, it makes sense to talk about it now. So why Warlord? What is it about Warlord that makes it a really good fit for this sort of challenge? And there are several points of synergy. In terms of combat spells, Last Stand is really great early game to be able to keep these low defense, low HP units alive and to be able to tank some heavy hits, including with the pole arm if I'm trying to clear sites that have like flying T3 or tier 4s, for example. Lion's Courage for the +5 melee strength, because these units I'm going to be using, these Orc Spearmen, have low melee damage as T1 irregulars. I'm going to need all the melee damage buff I can, so Lion's Courage is attractive in that way. Phoenix Warrior, if I have a unit in a battle that has several champion levels, I can see myself wanting to be able to keep that guy alive for the future, because they're going to fall in battle, especially to high damage dealing enemies, and so I might want to be able to have them resurged. And so Phoenix Warrior is attractive. Steadfast Ward is attractive in that it's really good for being able to get up in some units' face, and especially like dreadnought machines and shrines of smiting and stuff where you really need to do a lot of damage, but they're going to melt so fast that Steadfast Ward can keep them alive until they can do the damage they need to do. In certain circumstances, you can also cast Steadfast Ward on a unit and then just like take a bunch of attacks of opportunity, just keep running them back and forth in front of enemy units to sap multiple units 3 action points, so that your other units can go and do damage with impunity. I've seen that some experts have used Steadfast Ward in a really smart way, so I want to give myself that option. And then, of course, Bloodbath is like Lion's Courage on steroids. It's +5 melee strength on every single unit in the battlefield. And because I have to win by massing Orc Spearmen, I'm going to frequently have stacks of 18 or 24, 3 stacks or 4 stacks of units, especially for sieges. And so the ability to have all of those units deal 5 more damage through a battlefield wide enchantment like Bloodbath is essential. Relentless Army, less useful, just because they're not high enough defense and HP to really be able to cash in on the tireless. They're gonna fall pretty fast. So Relentless Army, which I'm usually really love for other challenges, is less cool here. So those are combat spells that are delicious. In terms of strategic spells, Authority of the Sword is good for expanding domain to be able to get some key structures. Raise Militia is also essential, mostly early game, right? So you can select a city for 30 casting points. It instantly deploys an irregular unit. In this case, if it's an Orc racial city, it'll deploy an Orc Spearman. So this is a way I can generate additional Orc Spearmen early game, not just through production. And that's only a thing you can do. So increasing my T1 irregular output is only possible with Warlord through a Raise Militia spell like this. So I thought that this would be really valuable. Death March, having them double their movement. There might be a few situations where having them go really fast is useful, but I just got to be careful with that because losing half of their HP, they have so little HP left, so it doesn't work as well for these Spearmen, but maybe situationally. Dread Siege, amazing spell. Going to be essential, I think, when I am trying to siege enemy cities that have good T3, T4 units who will decimate my units. I will need to debuff their happiness, especially since they're Emperor level AI who get that automatic +300 morale bonus. I'm going to need to do Dread Siege to try and even the scales, have them fumble some attacks, or at least have them not critical hit me. That will be really useful. Inspire Loyalty, I don't think I'll need. I'll have plenty of cash. The Draft, casters units gain +200 morale and cannot desert. The +200 morale is great. A buff to all those Orc Spearmen. Have them crit more often. That would be wonderful. Conqueror's Feast, enemy in the domain and enemy at the gate's morale penalties are twice as effective against the caster's enemies. And then less upkeep as well. again, not worried about the upkeep, but doubling morale penalties between Dread Siege and having enemy in domain and enemy at the gates. Morale debuffs against enemy opponents will again just help give me a better shot at during these difficult sieges. Hero slaying, giving casters units hero slaying, that occasionally could be useful. If I'm going up against a bunch of heroes, it'll be really situational. For Global Assault, it'll take me some time to get to Global Assault and to get it cast, and it'll be tough for it to keep it up because I'll be disjunting it like mad. But Global Assault would be amazing because taking those Orc Spearmen from no rank up to gold rank and giving them a little bit more HP, a little bit more defense, a little bit more melee and ranged attack power, getting them the armor piercing that comes with gold rank, all of that stuff, super useful. And they also get charge and first strike as long as Global Assault is up. So that will greatly increase my chances. So I look forward to going towards that Global Assault, Global Enchantment. Empire upgrades. Training regimen, so the cost of irregular units is reduced by 20%. That's going to add up. So I'm going to be producing so many Orc Spearmen. Going to really add up. War effort, empires, citizens, blah, blah, blah. Empire cities generate additional 10 gold a city. That will be huge for economy. So war effort's excellent. Garrison's honor, rarely used. Warrior culture, I'm going to be going on the offensive. I don't know how much defending I'm going to be doing, so I don't think that's essential. Conqueror units gain additional 50% experience for killing enemy units. That will be quite useful for early to mid game when I'm trying to keep the few Orc Spearmen I have alive and getting them up to golden and champion rank. So this is important early game to help me clear difficult sites too. So that's cool. Martial arts training, unfortunately, I can't use. Thoroughbred mounts won't be relevant. Warfare for additional casting points, that will be important because I want to be able to cast Bloodbath, Battlefield Enchantment. I will want to be able to cast some Lion's Courage and Phoenix, etc., on top of that. So the more casting points, the better. And also, the more casting points, the more I can be doing Authority of the Sword, the more I can be doing casting Embrace Darkness on cities that are producing Orc Spearmen, and doing the conscription stuff to summon additional Orc Spearmen. That will all be useful. The producing Berserker, Monster Hunter, Mountain Archer, Phalanx, Warbreed, Manicore Rider won't be relevant because I'm not allowed to use them. The hero upgrades won't be relevant because I will not be upgrading my hero because it won't matter because they'll never be physically present during battles. But I mean, that's a lot of benefits, right? Like there's a lot to love about the Warlord class when it comes to beating this particular challenge, and it just pairs really nicely since you're using regulars and this sort of thing. So those are a lot of the things that went into my thought process around Destruction Adept Explorer and then Shadowborn Adept, and why I'm choosing Warlord as well as Orc. So we're gonna start it here. So I will, this has been episode 1, and I will see you in episode 2, which will be turn 1, and I'll see you then.